All right. Thank you everyone for joining. So I believe we have our participants here. Before we deep dive and get started with the session, a few things to clarify. First of all, I want to make sure if I'm audible to everyone. Can everyone hear what I'm talking?
Yes, Arnav.
All right, sure. So in this session, we will be, for those of you who are not yet sure, so this session will be recorded, so you need not have to worry if you missed any of the topics in the slides. We'll be sharing out the links for the recording as well, and the slides to all the attendees here, okay? And at the end of the session, we will also be sharing out the combined Google form link, which has got the feedback of the session and also an assessment to understand how much you learned from the session. So there are a total of 10 quiz questions in it. And for those of you who will score 8 or above in that assessment, we will be sharing the participant certificate with them only by next Sunday, which is 9th April. Note that participant certificate will not be provided to everyone in the session. It will only be for those who are scoring 8 or above. And though I am confident that most of you here will get that certificate for sure. So a few more details about the session before we get started. So in this half an hour session, we'll try to cover the very basics of ReactJS. So for those of you in the webinar who already have previously worked with React, this would be just another refresher session for you. So for those of you, in case if you guys have any questions anytime, feel free to put all those questions you have in the chat session, and we will be taking those questions at the end of the session. Also, we will be opening the room for Q&A, and there will be scope for discussions or clarifications that you may have in the last 5 minutes of this webinar. All right, so I hope everyone is equally interested and waiting for getting the session commenced. So folks, with that said, without any further delay, we'll go ahead and get started with the session. I would ask Meghna to take the control from here. Yes, the stage is all yours, Meghna. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Can you give me the screen sharing option? No?
Sure. I think you would be able to access now. Please get started.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible for us. Yeah.
Okay. So let me start with my introduction. I'm Meghna. I'm currently working as an application developer at ThoughtWorks. And today's session is about getting started with ReactJS. So let's get started. Coming to the contents, we will start with the prerequisites, installations required, what is React, and its concepts like JSX, components, props, and hooks. And then we'll have a demo where we will create a to-do app. And lastly, we'll have the Q&A where you can ask your doubts. So talking about prerequisites, you should have a basic understanding of HTML and CSS, and you should know the fundamentals of JavaScript and ES6. It will be relatively easier for you to understand if you already know about ES6 variables, arrow functions, how to export and import, and how to use spread and rest operators and array functions. Coming to the installations, you need to install Node.js and VS Code or any other editor of your choice. So what is ReactJS? So ReactJS was developed by Jordan Walk, a software engineer at Meta. It is a JavaScript library for building interactive user interfaces. And it makes building complex interactive interfaces very simple. And React is all about components. All the interfaces in the end are made up of components. And like how React works, it creates a virtual data tree and detects new changes and updates the UI accordingly, which is through virtual DOM. And React allows developer to create web apps which can change data without even reloading the web page. Coming to the features of ReactJS, it is easy to learn. ReactJS is easy to learn as it uses JavaScript. It enhances speed and compatibility as well. Additionally, it integrates well with other JavaScript frameworks. It supports fast rendering. If your page uses a lot of fast updating, then React is the way to go. Coming to virtual DOM, React creates a virtual DOM in memory. So instead of manipulating the browser's DOM directly, it makes changes in the virtual DOM. React then finds out what changes have been made and changes only what only needs to be changed. React has great developer tools. It has reusable components, so you can create one component and reuse it at several places. And React has a strong community support. So these are some well-known companies that are using React. I hope you have heard more than one or two of them. Now coming to JSX. So JSX stands for JavaScript XML. It translates to plain JavaScript using React tools. So methods and properties are written in camel case. As you can see, if the component's name is greet multiple, then it starts with G capital and M capital. I mean, each word starts with a capital letter. This is what is camel case. And also, like, it is stricter than HTML. So if you use a BR tag, so you'll have to use a slash there. Fixed rule JSX expressions must have only one parent element. There is one more rule, and it is that you cannot have more than one parent element. It means that if you want to use two headings in your component, then if you write it like this, it will give you an error. So you have to either enclose it in a dev element or a fragment. JavaScript expressions can also be embedded inside JSX using curly braces, including variables, functions, and properties. So inside this HTML itself, you can add any variable of your choice, any methods or functions that you want to use inside this. And browsers don't understand JSX directly, so React uses a transpiler, which is called Babel, to convert JSX to JavaScript. Moving to components. So what are components? So the React apps are made out of components. It is a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And components are reusable. It can be split into multiple smaller independent components. And a component can be as small as a button or as large as an entire page. And it follows a Pascal case for naming the components. And there are two ways of writing a functional component. One is by using a function keyword, like we use for writing functions in JavaScript. And other way is using arrow function. If you're familiar with ES6 arrow functions, then you must have understood this format. So this is a basic component in which this component will return a button with this text, click me. And we have to export the component to use it in any other component. So this is how we write export default and the component's name. Moving ahead, we have props. So what are props? So the full form of props is properties, and props are also how you pass data from one component to another. So suppose you want to pass some data from one component to another, you can use props for that. So let us see an example here. So we have my element, which is car brand equals Ford. So this is a prop with the name brand and the value Ford. So how we will use it, this is how we use it, and this is where it is declared. So where it is declared inside the curly braces, you can type this props and you can access it by its name, like props.brand. Moving ahead, so how do we use styling in React using CSS? So there are two ways here. First way is inline styling, in which you can use for every element, you can use a style attribute, and then you will have to follow this convention. You have to add two curly braces and then the property name, which can be a color, and I've added a value as white. And if you want to add a background color, then you can write background color. So one thing to notice here is that this naming convention that is followed here is camel case. So this is how you can add a background color as blue. The other way of adding CSS is using a CSS style sheet. So for that, what you need to do, you have to create a separate file for CSS. Like I've written here, my header.css is my CSS file name. And using this class name .header, and inside that, like we usually write CSS, you can add the properties. And in the component, how can we use that? For the element you want to add the style, just add a class name equals and the name of that class, which is header here. And you can see the name is header, and here I've added CSS for header. So moving ahead, we have one concept called React hooks. So this React hooks were added in version 16.8, and there are some rules associated with it, which are like the hooks can be only used in React functional component. And so there are two types of hooks basically. One is the built-in hooks, and other is the custom hooks, which you can create. And it is further divided into basic hooks and additional hooks. So basic hooks can be use state, use effect, and use context. But today we'll talk only about use state. Coming to use state. So a use state is a React hook that allows you to add state to a functional component. So this is how it is imported. We write import, and then inside curly braces, we write use state, and then from React. And we declare it by using this const, and then we use square brackets. And inside that, there are two variables. So first is the state, which denotes the current state. And the next is a function to update the state. So whenever you call this function with some value, the state will be updated. And during initialization, you have to write equals use state. And inside that, you provide the initial value. So that initial value will be stored in the state. And once you call this method, its value will get updated. So this is what is written here. And one more thing here is that the set state function can be used to update the state and triggering a re-render of the component. So every time you set a state, your components get re-rendered. Now coming to the demo. So what we'll do today is we'll create a to-do list with add, edit, and delete functionality. So these are the steps. So first you need to open your terminal and type this command npx create react app, my first app. So let's do that. Npx create react app, and then you need to type your app name. If you do enter, then a React app will be created. So the next command is cd my first app. Then you need to go inside that folder, and then you can type code dot. So this command will open your app in VS Code. And for running it to a local host, you need to type this command npm start. So I've already created my app, and for running it, I need to run this command npm start. So this is how it looks. So now we'll make changes here. So coming to the app, there are a few folders here. You can see the first is node modules, which contains all the dependencies that are needed for an initial working React app. Then we have package.json file, which stores the various metadata and specifies the dependencies being used. Next is this index.js. Here we have this, we have imported an app component, which we are running from here. So if I open this app.js, you will see the code, which is displayed here. It has an image. If I comment it out, the image will be removed. So we don't need this pre-existing code. So I will directly delete this and we'll create our own component here. I am naming it as to do. So how we start writing a component, we can use const, then its name, which is to do, equals round races, and then we have to return it. And inside return, we need to add the JSX code. So this is how our prototype looks like. This will be a heading. Then we have an input and a add button, and these are the tasks where it will have some text and an edit button and a delete button. So starting with, I will use a div tag, and then inside div, I can use a class name here for adding. Later on, we'll add the CSS. So I'm naming it as to do wrapper. To do app wrapper. Again, inside this div, I'm creating one more div and its class name. I'll keep it as to do app. And inside this, I will create one h1 tag, which will display the heading, which is to do list. So if I now open my local host, one second. So we are getting one error that this app, regarding this app. So this is because earlier we were using one app, but now we have deleted it and we want to use a to-do component. So in index.js file, where it was using app, here we'll replace it with our to-do app. So for using it here, we need to export it. So we'll use that export default and the name of this, which is to do. And now we can import directly in this index.js. Now it is imported and let's see the output. So we can now see our heading as to-do list. What comes after heading? We need a form element, not here, in our to-do component. Now we need a form where we'll ask for, let me open that. So this is our form where we have this input text and this button. So I'm using form element for creating this. Let me open that again. Okay, this is where this is the form. And inside that, I will use input value equals text. And on change, handle change method, which we'll create. And then close this one. Now we need a button. Let's name it as add. And for this form, we need on submit, where we can add one method, handle add task. So now we have written these methods, but we need to create them. So first is handle add task. So what should happen when this is triggered?
Meghna, sorry to interrupt you. Can we please make this a little quick? We have another 9 minutes pending. So if you can make it a little faster, it would be great for all of us. Yeah.
Okay, if I write the code, like it will take much time. Can I show the code to them?
Sure. Yeah, you can do that as well. Yeah.
That will be faster. Okay.
Sure.
So this is how I've created it. So you can see that this is the div to do wrapper, the outer div, and inside that we have this to do app, and we have this heading, and then we have this form which has input and this add button. And then I've created this task. So what is this task? So this is basically imported, and this is a component that I've created. So if I open this task, you will see that there are some functionalities here. So this is the outer div, parent div, and then let me run and show you its output. So for running it, we'll use this command npm start. So this is the div wrapper, to do wrapper, which you can see in blue color. And then we have this to do app, which is in white color. And this is the heading. And this comes from the form, enter task and add. So if you add anything here, like suppose I want to add learn React as a task, and then click on add, then it will get added. So if you click on delete, this will get deleted. If you click on edit, it will give you edit functionality. So let me show you how I've created this quickly. So for buttons, I've used a material UI library. So this is basically an open source React component library, which implements Google's material design. And for using it, you need to first install these. You can go to its website and find the steps for installations. You need to first install it, and then you can directly import the buttons. Like these buttons I've not created. I've directly imported from there. So now if I want to add some more tasks, like I'll write sleep, and then if you click on delete, everything gets deleted. Let me show you the edit functionality as well. If I click on edit functionality, then I can change the value. I will write learn Java script. Okay, and this gets changed. So this we have implemented using React. So I can show you the example here. So what we are doing here is now we have all the elements. So on this form submit, we are calling this method handle add task. And this is the input, which is handle change. So what we are doing, we have declared few use states. We are using use state for storing the index and the tasks and the user input. So initially this user input is set as empty, and this index is set as 0, and task is an empty list. So whenever the user clicks on the add button, so this function gets triggered. And if it is empty, then we alert as add non-empty task. So suppose this is empty and I'm clicking on add, it alerts me that add non-empty task. So then I can add something else. And then in the else block, it is like set task. We are using a spread operator here. I've written ... task. So why are we using this? This is because if I don't use this and add only the new task, what will happen? The other older task will also get replaced by the new one. So we need the older ones. So for that, this operator is used, and this is the new task, which is there we are creating one ID, and the value that we are getting from the user input. And we are setting the index to +1 the index of the previous element. And then after all these two functionalities are done, we set the input back to empty string. So let me show you the task component. So this we have imported in our to-do. So you can see that there can be multiple tasks, but I have not written each task like a separate element here. I'm reusing this task component multiple times for creating tasks, and the number is also not fixed. So how am I doing this? So this is the task. I'm using a map for displaying this. So for each task, what I'm doing, if the task ID is equal to the updated task ID. So one thing is that when you edit one thing, the other elements should not get affected. So for that, this condition.
I'm sorry to interrupt you in the middle. So we have another 3 minutes left in the meeting. So there are a couple of questions in the chat as well. So if you can just go through those questions and help them understand. And yeah, so you can have this presentation open, not a problem.
Okay. Yes, we can share the PPT. What other questions do we have?
We have the questions. Can you just go back to the PPT slide? We can't see the slides now.
Okay. You want to go to the PPT? Yeah.
Yes. So the couple of more slides we have here, and we have a couple of questions in the chat as well. So if you can just go through those questions and get them clarified.
Yeah, sure. So one question is that, can you explain event prevent default? What happens if we didn't call it? So I am using event prevent default because this form has a specific functionality, and if I don't click on this, if I don't write this, it behaves differently, and it does something which I don't require. So this is required here. I want to understand how ReactJS is more powerful than other front-end tools like CSS and JavaScript. So ReactJS is not like ReactJS is using CSS and JavaScript. It's not like I couldn't understand your question clearly here.
Yes, Alex, can you be more specific, please, here, so that we can go ahead and discuss that question? And Meghna, can you please move down to the 18th slide that we have for the question Q&A section?
Okay.
So guys, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. We have another minute left, so you can go ahead and ask your questions. There is, I think, one more question in the chat. If you can just want to go through that.